These hearts are kind of cool. I pretend they talk. All right. You guys ready?
Mm-hmm.
Can I get like an action or something?
Action.
Action. Okay. Sorry. All right. So this is a cow heart. This is another cow heart. This is a sheep heart. I'm gonna have both of these on the practical. Sheep hearts are good because they're closer to the size of a human heart. But the cow hearts are nice, and also we can use, you know, a lot of these, so everybody in class can be messing around with one of these if they want to. But these ones are better to see some of the structures because everything's larger on them. But I'm going to have a mix of both on the practical portion of the next exam, so be ready for that. So for the heart, first of all, this point here is called the apex of the heart. The other side is called the base. Right, now as you guys would imagine, just like a real heart-shaped thing, the point goes down and the base goes up, so the apex is the inferior side, the base is superior. First thing you want to do in order to orient yourself, because you have to distinguish between, you know, if I open this up, my point right here, you have to tell me that that's the left ventricle, you know, not just a ventricle, it's the left ventricle. So it's good to be able to orient yourself right and left. And the best way to do that is when you're trying to learn the heart is just to find this pulmonary trunk, right? It's a pretty pronounced really thick blood vessel that's coming off of the heart in that curved direction, and it's always going to be in the front, all right? So in your anterior side. When it's on a cow, it's actually kind of sitting down like that because they're on 4 legs, but don't worry about that. Just imagine this is just a really big human's heart. And so once you orient that pulmonary trunk in the front, if you look on this side, you can see this is an auricle, it's not a blood vessel. You can realize that it's actually pretty easy, right? You see that it's a really prominent way. So once you have front and back, top and bottom, you have right and left, right? That's how right and left fit on here. One other thing, landmark, is this right here, which is the interventricular groove, which is separating the left and the right ventricles. And so you can use that as kind of a landmark. So keep in mind that the apex of the heart is encompassed by the left side of the heart. So if you look at the line here, and that there's no other dividing line along this side, then you know that the part, if you just follow this part from the point up, you're on the left side. The left half of the heart is bigger, if that helps you. All right. So externally on the cats, if you guys remember, the heart is covered in a pericardial sac. That's been removed on these guys. Sometimes there might be little bits of it stuck on here, like this would be part of the pericardial sac, but I'm not going to ID that. This outermost layer is it's going to be epicardium, which is the same as visceral pleura. All right. You guys remember that from last time? It's just that layer that's covering the internal organs. That's also called epicardium. So also externally, you have these structures that look kind of like ears. They're called auricles. And those, you can actually, they're kind of hollow. You can get inside of them a little bit if you go from the atria. And those are basically just to provide a little bit of extra volume to the atria. They fill up with a little bit of blood. They're kind of funny looking. So those are auricles. Let's see, what else? I think that's about it. Okay, so you had epicardium on the outside. The actual muscle in there is called myocardium. Right, myo meaning muscle, cardium meaning heart, right? Pretty straightforward. Then the innermost layer is endocardium, so that's just this layer on the inside of everything. So epicardium, myocardium, endocardium. On the inside of the heart here, a couple of the prominent structures are these chordae tendineae, heart strings. Those are associated with the valves of the heart. Right? And then this kind of lumpy looking muscle in there, right in here, that's called papillary muscle. And that's basically just associated with the chordae tendineae. All right, so that's about it for just miscellaneous structures. The heart's got with 4 chambers to it. It's got left and a right ventricle, and a left and a right atrium. The atria are up here. Everything above these valves here. So just this region, if you close that, you can see how this valve here would close that off, and everything above that would be left atrium. And if you do the same over here, this one's a lot smaller since it's been cut at kind of a weird angle. This region up in here would form the right atrium. So it helps when you think an atrium is like a lobby, basically, like an atrium of a bank is where you go in as soon as you walk in. So when you're thinking about where the blood is flowing, it flows, when you're coming into the heart, it always flows into an atrium first. All right, so we're going to follow the flow of blood through the heart, and we're going to start with deoxygenated blood that's coming from the peripheral tissues. And that's going to come into the right atrium first via the vena cava. Vena cava is kind of the flimsiest blood vessel on the outside of the heart. That's not the right one. Actually, yeah, it is. Okay, so, and it's got 2 parts, the superior vena cava and the inferior vena cava. Right, so keep in mind this is the back side of the heart that we're looking at right now, so that's the front. Right. Okay, so inferior vena cava is bringing in deoxygenated blood from the lower half of the body, everything below the diaphragm. Superior vena cava is bringing in deoxygenated blood from the other side. This is really sort of weaker blood vessel here, just because it's sort of a passive just trickling of deoxygenated blood from all over your body. And that comes into the right ventricle. So if I can find it here, I'm not sure you can see it very well. Helps to get your finger in here. So yeah, this one it doesn't show very well because it hasn't been cut. I'm actually up into the auricle right now. That's where my fingers are. Let me try on this one. Find vena cava. Alright, so this is right atrium. This shows it a lot better. So we come in through the superior vena cava and into the right atrium. Right, then we pass through a valve. You can see this is this valve right here. In this case, you're going through the tricuspid valve, and the blood moves when the atrium contracts. All right, so blood flows in via the vena cava, atrium contracts, pushes the blood through the tricuspid valve into the right ventricle. Right, and these chordae tendineae there are basically what pulls the valve back into place. So the blood pushes through, and then it kind of displaces that valve. Those doors open, and then when the atrium relaxes, the muscle pulls those, and those strings basically pull the doors back shut into place, keeping the blood in the right ventricle. All right, so now our blood's chilling in the right ventricle. This is still deoxygenated blood. The right ventricle is going to contract, and that's going to force the blood out via this guy right here, which is that pulmonary trunk. Okay, so we can come all the way through. Right, and so as the name implies, and actually on the way there, this is opened up right around there just a bit. Yeah, you can see pass through what's called the pulmonary semilunar valve. All right, there are 2 kinds of valves. There are these the bicuspid and tricuspid valve, which have chordae tendineae, and there are 2 semilunar valves which don't have any chordae tendineae associated with them. So that's how you can differentiate these. So you pass through the pulmonary semilunar valve into the pulmonary trunk, which branches into the right and left pulmonary arteries, which go to the lungs. So this is the case where you have arteries which are carrying deoxygenated blood, and they're carrying it to the lungs. You have those arteries branch off into arterioles, which reach capillary beds where you have the actual gas exchange. That blood becomes oxygenated. Then capillaries branch into venules, which then turn into veins, which are bringing the oxygenated blood back to the heart. And they come back in through your pulmonary veins, which are right here and here, left and right pulmonary veins. I don't care that you distinguish them, because usually on your hearts they've been split into just one hole. Yeah, so in this case they're still separate, but just barely on here. So that's right. If I can find it, yeah, it's right here. On the sheep heart, your pulmonary veins are almost always fused into, your veins are fused into just one big hole because it's hard to cut that. So it's just your two pulmonary veins are just one big gaping hole. But anyway, in this case, we go through pulmonary vein into, any guesses? So we started in the right ventricle, or we started in the right atrium. So we come into the left atrium, all right? So remember, you always come in through the atrium. And so everything basically above this valve here is going to be left atrium. At this point, this valve here is called the bicuspid valve, also the mitral valve. Okay, I was saying earlier, the best way to remember that is either that the whole left side of the heart is much stronger than the right side, so you can think that your bicep is stronger than your tricep to remember that, or that B and L, so bicuspid and left, those are closer in the alphabet than tricuspid and right, all right? Those are from later, so you can put those two together alphabetically. Anyway, so we go through the bicuspid valve. Remember, that's a one-way, basically, trapdoor into the left ventricle of the heart, all right? And so here we have this tons of muscle tissue right here. This is the wall of the left ventricle. This is the interventricular septum, but you have really dense muscle tissue here. That's because this is a really powerful contraction. That's what your systolic blood pressure is reading, is that contraction, because it's the strongest, most easy to get a signal of. And so you have that powerful contraction, and that's going to force the blood up and out, kind of through almost the middle of the heart, where you see right here we have another valve with no chordae tendineae, so that tells us it's a semilunar valve. This is the aortic semilunar valve, because you go out through there and out the aorta, which is this. If you look at the heart on top, in the base, I guess we'd say, you see these just really fat blood vessels. There should be two of them, and they're both coming from the aorta. You can see that they're connected right here pretty well, I think. This is the aorta, and this one that branches off is the brachycephalic. Brachy is referring to your arms, and cephalic is your head, so this is taking blood to your arms and your head, basically. Right. And so that's basically, at that point, taking that oxygenated blood out to all of your peripheral tissues, from which then, once it's been stripped of oxygen from cellular respiration, it will come back in through the vena cava.
What are they called again?
They're called auricles, A-U-R, auricles. You can see them on this guy as well.